So Extraction is a action film starring Chris Hemsworth. Now wait, don't click away. I know that Chris Hemsworth, outside of Thor, a lot of his action films or pretty much any film that he's in just kind of slips under the radar. But this one actually might be worth taking inventory of. It's actually not too bad. as as I was pleasantly surprised. I was fully expecting this film to just kind of be a simple by the numbers action thriller, and the fight scenes would look okay, but it wouldn't really impress. But I was pleasantly surprised. I think in terms of the way that this film is assembled, it's not too bad. It's actually pretty entertaining in some spots. So Chris Hemsworth plays Tyler Rake, who is a mercenary, and the first thing I'll mention right off the bat is they do a very obvious joke in here that I know everyone is going to point out. His name is Tyler Rake, and at one point he does kill somebody with a rake. Like, just shoves... Like, he takes a rake and shoves someone's face into it. So he's a mercenary, and he's been hired to go off to Bangladesh, where there's been this criminal feud that's been going on. So in other words, this crime lord has kidnapped someone's son, and Tyler's been hired to go in there and get the kid out of that city. Seems like a fairly simple mission for him, but then it kind of gets complicated along the way. They find out that the criminal that they're stealing this kid from, the kidnappers, have a lot of control over this city. Like, they control the cops. So immediately once Tyler gets the kid and it tries to make his way out of the city, everyone's against him. Like, there's gangsters who are working for this criminal overlord who are coming after him. The cops are all after him. Sometimes the cops and gangsters kind of like fight each other to who can get to the kid first. It's very elaborate. They basically want to like cut. It's like. This is going to be a weird connection here, but there was a film called 21 Bridges from last year that was also produced by the Russo brothers, which this film is as well, in which it's a similar concept. They're trying to cordon off the city and basically prevent anyone from getting out. So it's kind of like a reverse 21 Bridges. It's like we're not quite rooting for the the law enforcement to stop these criminals. Although it does carry a similar context to 21 Bridges by having, this wave of corruption where Tyler isn't quite sure who to trust as he makes his way out of the city. This film was directed by Sam Hargrave, who had previously... He's a stuntman. He's done work on stuff like Atomic Blonde, and this is his directorial debut. And it's actually pretty well done. A lot of the fight scenes here are very brutal. They pack a lot of excitement. They do that, they do that kind of like that long one take thing where, like at one point they get into a car and there's a long car chase and we look out the front of the windshield. We look at the back of the windshield. There's cars all over the place. Tyler's just like struggling to find somewhere to turn next and try to avoid gunfire. Goes on for a pretty long shot. And it's not too bad. I love the fact that the camera gets very up close and personal. It's kind of similar to like Atomic Blonde and that sequence when they were kind of going through the apartment building. There's a great scene in Extraction where they're kind of like running through different like apartments, but we see the perspective first of the law enforcement. So we follow them up there and we're kind of like waiting for that moment when Tyler will strike, and he kind of strikes silently at first and then much, much louder once his cover's blown. And yeah, it's very well assembled. Like you can definitely tell this was made by a stuntman, because it's very capably shot. It's very much, and I mean, like in terms of like the story, like it's a fairly simple story. They just got to get the kid out of the city. Even the corruption that goes on there is kind of expected. More like I expected it at some point, because I'm like, he gets the kid fairly early in the film, so naturally there's going to be more to the story that we don't know about. Even though it does kind of have this this kind of like Sunset Boulevard type staging to it, where we more or less know where this story is going to go from the beginning, and we're kind of just watching the action play out. Like, it doesn't take a genius to figure out how this film is going to end. But it's capably shot. I got to mention though, I love the the actor who plays the kid that he's sent to extract from his kidnapping, because usually when you have like kids in this type of scenario, they're generally supposed to be like either like cocky or too terrified, and this kid is kind of smart enough to know who to trust. Like at first he does not trust Tyler, because why would he? Like he's being kidnapped by all these different kinds of people that basically want him dead, so he's not too trustworthy. But at the same time, he's cunning enough to to escape a few of the bad guys. Like at one point he's being chased by the police on his own and manages to hold his own pretty well in terms of like getting away. He also doesn't really crack any jokes that make you grate on his nerves. He does kind of have like those predictable slow moments where he basically, he talks about his family and he connects with Tyler on more of an emotional level. A little bit of that. There was a pretty great moment I liked when he was forced to defend himself and ended up killing someone. And it's just nerve-wracking to him. It makes him just like terrified and horrified at the situation. So there's very much a lot of grit to this film. This is kind of what Roger Ebert would call a bruised-arm film, where essentially our hero is not quite unstoppable. Like he gets punched, he gets shot at, he gets stabbed, he gets hit by cars, and it really affects him. Like he's battered and bruised. The further we go along through this film, that by the climax, he's just a bloody, bruised mess by the end of this film. And I kind of like the fact that it kind of like shows on Chris Hemsworth that he actually is being hurt. Like, cause you look at Chris Hemsworth and you think like, okay, he's an action hero. So it's going to take a lot for us to believe that he's actually hurt. So there's several scenes where Hemsworth is just growling. Like he's been hit by a car, or he's been stabbed, or he's been shot in the arm, and he's just growling viciously. And sometimes it's ridiculous, but other times like, okay, I could believe that you'd be that, barbaric and pissed off if that happened to you. So yeah, it's very well assembled. I mean, there's not like a huge commentary here, like on like the nature of like like India's crime situation. Obviously, they don't want to go that route. They just want to have an exciting chase and exciting fights and chases all around Bangladesh. And for being little more than that, I think it works out pretty well. There's not a lot of character to Tyler. I mean, they do allude to he had like a past life that he shut out before. That's fairly standard, like action setup pathos. There's not a whole lot to the kid. In fact, it seems more like when they set up the kid that he's trying to extract, it's kind of more like they're just avoiding pitfalls as opposed to like building him up as somebody more interesting. Like we feel for him, we like him, but there's not a whole lot to his character than that. The villains are very, very, very stock. Like they're those typical, like, gussied up in gold type criminals who always like kind of like look down, and they say like, you have failed me, you will not fail me again, and that typical villain banter. Like they even have to up the ante to make you believe that these guys are horrible by the fact that they employ children, and if the children fail them, they kill the kids. So you get a lot of like conflicting moments for Tyler. Like at one point he's cornered by 4 children with guns and machetes, and he's conflicted, like, how do I deal with them? Naturally, because he's supposed to be the good guy, he's not going to kill the kids. He will punch them, and he will smack them around a bit and get really pissed off. But yeah, they really got to build up the villains here, because like they're just on paper, they're just stock. Like they're your typical criminal overlords. They have fancy dinners. They speak very little. They look down. They just say, "Get everyone on the force to find this one kid," even though that seems like a lot of work just for this one kid. Yeah. So I mean, in terms of the way the action is assembled, I really liked it, and really that's all you have to go on with this type of film. Like it doesn't really offer much. But for being little more than just, chases and fights, I gotta admit, it's pretty well assembled, and I really dug it. I especially dug seeing Chris Hemsworth in a role where he's supposed to take a lot more punches than he usually does in his films. So yeah, for a first-time director from Sam Hargrave, he does a pretty good job, and I can't wait to see what he does next. So, for Extraction, 3 out of 5 stars.